Hey guys, well, Steven Universe is over. And depending on how long it takes for me to edit and upload this video, it's been over for a while. So, I decided, I want to make a video about just my opinions on, the series as a whole, but more specifically, kind of these last few episodes, because I have a lot of feelings about them. So yeah. I'm recording this on a different microphone than usual, so if it sounds different, that's why. Also, this is very unscripted. I have a list of like bullet points to go through, but yeah, it's mostly just gonna be me rambling to myself. Usually when I do these kinds of videos, I'm talking with someone else, but this time I am not. So I'm just gonna have to edit out the bits of me thinking of what I'm gonna say and smacking my lips and clearing my throat over and over. So I remember when the finale aired, like the last few episodes of Steven Universe Future aired. I was watching them just kind of on my computer in my room, just seeing how the series ends. just figuring things out. I have had a lot of feelings over the course of the series, but this I was just wondering how is it gonna end? So I sat through these last few episodes, and when I was done, when the credits just started rolling on the very last episode of Steven Universe, I just kind of sat there, just thinking about things, and then I had to go downstairs for dinner, with my family, and my mom was like, "Oh, what were you doing in your room?" And I was like, "Oh, I was watching the finale for Steven Universe, whatever." And she was just like, "Oh, don't you love that show?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think so. I eh. It was hard for me to think about it was hard for me to think about what I felt, because I was just kind of like letting it wash over me. Um, I remember I remember another cartoon that has impacted my life in a similar way. Gravity Falls. I remember when I first watched that finale. I think I was 13, and I watched it with my siblings, and I cried. Because this huge thing like was ending, and it was this magnificent just explosion of creativity and emotion, and it was just a lot. And this was also a lot, but in a very different way, because I wasn't sure what to think. Later on I rewatched it. I was looking at the discussion happening on like Tumblr and Instagram and everything. I rewatched the episodes again. And the more that I watched them, the more negativity I felt. The more I realized, I really I really don't like this. That's strange. But, before I get to it, I guess I want to talk about my thoughts and feelings on the show overall. Overall, I've just had this huge, like, love-hate relationship with the show. I started off really loving it. I was a kid, and I really liked the vibe of the show. And looking back at it, after rewatching a lot of it, I've gained some new opinions, new feelings, new insights on the show itself. And overall, it's just had a lot of ups and downs. Even in those first few seasons that I really loved, there's a lot of moments in there that I'm like, that wasn't that great. But after those first few seasons, it kind of went through a seasonal rot. Despite it not being like a lot of the other shows where that go through seasonal rot, like Simpsons, Family Guy, The Fairly Odd Parents, SpongeBob. There's a few of those. But this isn't like primarily a comedy. It's a story-driven show. But overall, I just felt less and less invested in the story, and over time, I was like, oh, this is stupid. This is weird. I don't like this. I don't like that. And it just kind of built up over time. Throughout the series, I was trying to keep like a very positive outlook, because I was just like, I love this show, and it's great, and I want to love it, because I did really want to love it, and I still really want to love it, but a lot of it is just not, a lot of it's just bad. It is. Yeah, and by the end of it, by now, it's just left me unsatisfied. But season by season, season 1 was okay. It was long. It was the longest season, because it was like originally 2 seasons that was put into 1, I guess. And it was good at establishing things. It had a certain vibe that I really enjoyed, especially when I was younger. The characters were simplistic, but they were likable. And overall, the jailbreak, which, was what everything built up to, I'm sure that a lot of people were turned off by how little was kind of happening in the first season, and I agree with that. They could have gotten to the big twist to jailbreak quicker, but I think the build up to jailbreak was, for me, worth it, because I really love jailbreak, and that's, it's one of my favorite episodes of the series, honestly. And that, that leads us into season 2, which I think is better than season 1. It still had a lot of ups and downs throughout the whole series. There's just so many peaks and so many valleys. But I think there were a lot of, peaks in this season, specifically with Peridot's character development, one of my favorite redemption arcs ever. And overall, it took more risks and was just much more interesting, and it got to the point quicker. And it was another build-up that I felt ended up being really worth it in the end. Season 3, it was another season that had a lot of peaks and a lot of valleys. The peaks were kind of getting higher, and the valleys were getting kind of lower, in my opinion, because it was taking more and more risks. And I think some of the episodes in season 3 are some of my favorites ever, most notably Mr. Greg. I think that's one of the most beloved episodes of the series, understandably, but it was a show that kept building and building and building, and I was getting really interested, and by the end of season 3, it was like the final few episodes, they were crazy to me. It all built up to a twist, the first twist, in quotes, that rose quartz shattered pink diamond, and that it brought up this idea of, morality, is shattering a gem a good idea? Because for a show that's, so pacifist, it's suddenly bringing in this idea that, Rose Quartz, this peaceful warrior, shattered a diamond. And that brings up so many interesting ideas. Season 4, we were already kind of at a rocky start with the first episode. I remember watching the first episode, The Kindergarten Kid, and thinking, this is not right. I enjoyed The Kindergarten Kid. It's a classic homage to Roadrunner cartoons, but it was a bit of a shock and a different vibe than I was used to, and something that I wasn't super on board with. There were a few really good episodes of season 4. Mindful Education is something that, that's something I really enjoyed. Overall, it consisted of a lot of filler. It was a huge filler season, and it was building up to a payoff that I just didn't end up liking. I was still watching because I was still invested in the show, and I was invested in these characters, and I was wondering what was going to happen to them. But it didn't satisfy me or intrigue me in the same way as the finales to seasons 1 through 3. And I don't know if that's because it ended on a cliffhanger, although Jailbreak did kind of too. But yeah. And then, oh boy, season 5. Season 5, it was a rough one for me. So I actually quit on the show 3 times during season 5 alone. It took me a long time to watch the full season. There were 3 moments that pissed me off so much that I was just like, you know what, I don't really want to watch this show anymore. And the first time was, the 4th episode of the season, where it boggles my mind that a show that takes itself so seriously used a twist that is so outdated and so just Deus Ex Machina-esque. The idea that, oh, you can just bring someone back to life, that just immediately removes all tension, and I really just, like, at that point, I was like, okay, you know what, I'm gonna stop watching. I don't really care about the show anymore. But, you know, I went back to it because people were saying, oh my god, it's so crazy, So I watched, I started watching it again up to the biggest twist in A Single Pale Rose, up to, the twist that I myself made fun of in a YouTube video I made years ago. Make sure you tell the person who loves cartoons of the stupidest theories possible.
Rose quartz is totally pink diamond. It's obvious.
The twist that, like, I thought was the stupidest internet theory, that rose quartz is actually pink diamond. And when I watched that episode, I was watching it and was like, oh, this is getting really interesting. And then I watched A Single Pale Rose and I was like, this is so fucking stupid. Why is everybody so impressed by this twist? Like, what? Why? And I quit on the show again. Because the pink diamond twist, like, it reminded me a lot of the twist in Gravity Falls in Not What He Seems, because it was a twist that people predicted through internet theories, but it was so much more effective in Gravity Falls because, you know, it was something that none of us would have expected. Like, you know, that was another theory that I didn't think would actually come true, but it came true in a very organic way, and like, suddenly everything makes sense. But with the pink diamond twist, it just came out of nowhere to me. Obviously, there was foreshadowing to it, but all it did was really it just pissed me off, really. Even after we got the explanation for why pink diamond had to be rose quartz in order to free the Earth, she still lied to everybody. Why didn't she tell the other crystal gems who she was? I don't remember there being any sort of explanation as to why she couldn't tell anybody but Pearl, besides the fact that, oh, I just wanted my past to be behind me. And why would she bring Steven into the world knowing that he could face the consequences of her own actions? I think that's why so many people hate Pink Diamond. But, you know, I went back to the show after Change Your Mind aired. I watched through season 5, and I was like, this is, like, interesting. I'm not sure if I really enjoy this, but this is interesting. And then I watched Change Your Mind, and, like, I have very mixed feelings on it, because there are moments in there that I find really impactful, but it's also really stupid. It's just, I don't understand just the whole redemption arc of the diamonds. Like, it pisses me off. I understand, like, the mentality of, you know, everybody has a little bit of goodness inside them, but personally, I don't believe that. Like, I hate to be that person, but I don't think evil dictators can be redeemed. And, you know, that's just my opinion. You know, you can believe that, like, Hitler can be redeemed, but, like, I'm sorry, that's just how I feel. Like, it pisses me off that, oh, let's just, you know, redeem these evil dictators. I'm probably gonna make a video on redemption arcs, honestly. So I'm gonna save these thoughts for that video. Just the idea that the diamonds can be redeemed, but, like, Jasper can't. That pissed me off. Anyways, so I quit on the show again after Change Your Mind. I'm like, oh, this is the finale. Bye. I don't care. I'm leaving this. I don't care about the movie. Whatever. And then people were like, oh, the movie is really good. And I'm like, okay, you know what? I'll watch the movie. And the movie was fine. I liked some of the songs. I didn't like others. I liked some of the story. I didn't like other parts. You know, it was fine. I'm glad I saw it. But, I'm not a huge fan of how Spinell's arc kind of ended. because it's just like, oh, let's just give her to the diamonds. And I'm like, is that really a good idea? Nah, yeah, but whatever. Fine. Steven Universe Future, which was technically the topic of this video. I've been talking for a long time about the whole show, but here's Future. Future is interesting because it's something that I think has a very interesting concept for an epilogue series. You know, it kind of shows like, oh, this isn't just a happily ever after. There are serious, Steven's going through serious issues, serious trauma, and a lot of problems with his mental health. And, like, that's really interesting. But the execution of it is, I just don't like it. I really don't. I think it just has to do with the way mental health was portrayed, because Steven Universe Future, like, out of every show in the world, it reminded me most of 13 Reasons Why. First of all, it actually portrays a lot of the aspects of mental illnesses correctly. Like, when I was watching the show, like, first of all, during Steven Universe Future, for context, I've actually been going through a lot of issues with my mental health, so kind of watching this interpretation of it, it gave me a lot of feelings, so let's go with that. Just the way that Steven's mental health gets worse and worse over the course of this little epilogue series. It's realistic. It's very realistic, and a lot of the symptoms that are portrayed of trauma and anxiety and intrusive thoughts, like, that's all portrayed accurately in terms of, like, what is actually happening, the way it is portrayed in terms of the way Steven is seeing this, and kind of the outbursts that happen are realistically portrayed, and that kind of makes some other aspects of how it's portrayed even worse. The trauma and a lot of the symptoms of it are kind of portrayed as if the people who experience these things are bad people. That's kind of the way I saw it, and it has a lot to do with I Am My Monster. So I think I'm gonna focus this review mostly on the last few episodes, because I think that's where it all comes to an apex. So let's talk about I Am My Monster. So first of all, the design for the monster Steven, like, for a show that has had some interesting creature designs, the monster Steven, honestly, it felt so bland. It was just like, oh, he's a Godzilla, and he has a really long neck. You know what? I bet that neck was only put in because everybody was freaking out when they saw that Steven has a neck in the Steven Universe movie. Everybody was like, oh my gosh, he has a neck now. And then some character designer was like, hey guys, what if we gave Monster Steven a really long neck? It was so funny. And yeah, people really freaked out over that too, because it's like, now he has a really long neck. It's so funny. So in I Am My Monster, which is the episode that pissed me off the most, Steven, like, his mental breakdown in the episode before, it kind of led to him turning into a monster, which I guess a monster is an accurate representation of what having a mental illness feels like, and oftentimes the people who go through trauma or who have experienced intrusive thoughts, or people with anxiety in general, they tend to view themselves as monsters, even when that's completely untrue and completely, it's stupid to think that. But kind of the idea that Steven himself is portrayed as a monster gives off some implications that they bother me a lot. And there was one line in I Am My Monster that, like, just really rubbed me the wrong way, and it's kind of the reason why I'm making this video at all. I'm just gonna put a clip right here.
As long as he believes he's a monster, he'll stay one.
It boggles my mind that this line actually got past the first draft. I understand that it's hard to talk about mental health. A lot of times when people talk about mental health, they give off unfortunate implications. But how did so many people read this line in the script and proofread and watch the episode, and not a single person thought, maybe this is a bad thing to say? As long as he believes he's a monster, he'll stay that way. I understand what is being said on the surface level, on the surface level of, as long as he believes he's a monster, like, this won't go away. Like, if you spend all your time just hating yourself, it's not going to help. That I understand, and that I agree with. But the implications of it is that if you're mentally ill and you believe that you are a monster, you are a monster, and you're gonna stay that way, and that's your own fault. That's not helping. Weirdly enough, believe it or not, calling someone a monster because of what they've been through, or because of how they're feeling, it's not cool, and it doesn't help. I remember there was an episode of The Amazing World of Gumball that showed this mentality and treated it in a much better and more tactful way. There was a line in particular that was like,
"That's not what you are. It's just how you feel."
No, that's not who you are. That's just how you feel. And I think that is a much better way of portraying this whole idea. Because just saying, as long as you believe you're a monster, you'll stay that way, it gives off the implication that this is your fault. And that's just not true. It's not somebody's fault that they have a mental illness that causes them to think these irrational thoughts. You can't blame someone for anxiety that they themselves cannot control. Because that's something that we like to call victim blaming. And victim blaming it's not cool. Just don't do it. The one thing that I did really enjoy about that episode was Steven's acting. At the very end, like when Steven was crying, that felt real. Like that was some of the realest crying that I've ever heard from like a voice actor. So kudos to Zach Callison. He fucking knows what he's doing. Great actor. I think what makes I Am My Monster so much worse than it could be is the fact that the episode before, specifically that final scene, where Steven's just like, oh, everything is fine, it's fine, I don't want you guys to worry. And when he's like confronted and he eventually breaks and he tells everybody exactly how he feels, explains everything to them, that scene felt so real. Like, that's extremely, like, realistic to how people with trauma, with anxiety, with intrusive thoughts actually feel about themselves.
I'm a fraud. I'm a fraud. I'm a monster.
That's real. Like, that, I felt that in my soul, in my bones, in my... I've been going through some shit. I think that's what makes the impact of that line, as long as he believes he's a monster, he'll be one. Or I don't remember the exact line. And I think that real feeling breakdown is what makes that one line especially, but that whole episode too, is what makes it so insulting to me. Because you have the blueprints to make a really good, really impactful series, basically, about mental health and how to deal with it. And also, I think getting support from other people is also a good thing. That's extremely important in in feeling better, essentially. But I think what is neglected until literally the last possible moment is bringing up the idea of therapy. Steven mentions offhand in the final episode that he's got a therapist, and everybody was so happy, like all the fandom on like Tumblr was just like so happy, like, yes, you have a therapist, yes, get help, yay. But like, why not earlier? Why didn't Steven get a therapist is what I'm wondering. Like, why did you wait until the very last episode to do that? That's just a thought. But kind of going back to the idea of intrusive thoughts, the way that, intrusive thoughts were portrayed in technically in one way, like by Steven feeling the urge to slam White Diamond's head into a pillar. That scene also felt very real. Like, that's something that people with intrusive thoughts do experience, and it feels surreal and it feels wrong, and you want to stop it, but you can't. That's a real experience, and it's something that real people do experience. Intrusive thoughts are terrible things. They suck. They have to do with worst fears, with the idea that I don't want to become this. I don't want to do this, but I can't stop thinking like this. But I think what ruins it is the fact that Steven is a literal murderer and never gets the consequences for it. He murders Jasper. He shatters Jasper. Shatter is another word for kill, because with gems, he killed Jasper. And, it's brought up a couple times. It's brought up during that mental breakdown where he reveals that he's a shatterer.
I only actually shattered Jasper! What?
And then it's brought up, I think, once by Pearl.
First he says he's a shatterer, and then he's turned into this thing!
And that's it. That's all. We never address it again. We see Jasper once more, still not redeemed. I'm still a little pissed at that. She was one of the first villains introduced, and she never got a redemption arc, but White Diamond did. Whatever. She was shattered. And not only that, but she was also brought back to life. So not only is it like, oh, it's a quick fix. She's not dead anymore. That kills the tension. It has the same tension killing feeling that the episode with Lars coming back to life did. For a show that relies so much on stakes, it really loves taking away those stakes because Steven's all powerful and he can literally bring people back to life, people or gems. Bring them back to life. He never gets any consequences for what he does, for shattering someone. It definitely adds to the final mental breakdown, but that could have happened without him actually killing. I remember throughout the whole series, I remember in season 3, when it was revealed that Rose killed Pink Diamond, Steven was heartbroken. Like, he was like, how could my mom shatter someone? How could a gem shatter another gem? That's terrible. And sure, he shattered Jasper on accident. That's still manslaughter, at least. Like, or gem slaughter. Haha, very funny. I'm so funny. But it's just terrible. And the fact that Steven is a shatterer also, it doesn't help the argument you're making with intrusive thoughts, because I thought at first that the argument would be just because you have intrusive thoughts doesn't mean that you're a bad person. I mean, it didn't even bring up the intrusive thoughts after that one breakdown again. It never brought up again. People with intrusive thoughts aren't murderers. That's usually how it works. People with intrusive thoughts do not want to kill people or hurt people. They're experiencing thoughts that they cannot control, that they desperately want to control. So it really ruins an argument about people with intrusive thoughts not being inherently bad people when the person you're showing who has intrusive thoughts murders someone. That, I don't understand what the argument is supposed to be. Is it just to make Steven feel worse? Is that it? Is this just one giant sad fic? Because that's what it feels like, because all these things are brought up and they're not really addressed. They're addressed in one way, and then everything else is kind of in passing. There was the big moment in I Am My Monster where it's like, we gotta support Steven. Okay, that's a good step. That's a good first step. And you brought up the therapy in passing. Okay, but like anything else? You want to bring up anything else about any of these topics, or do you just want to leave them there? Do you want to just bring them up and leave them there? It's It's exactly like 13 Reasons Why. It's exactly like 13 Reasons Why. Redeeming the worst possible villains and just bringing up controversial topics and then just leaving them there. And I think that's just what pisses me off so much, because it's like, you're Steven Universe. You should know better. I guess the one final thing I want to say about the very final episode is that it was boring. The final episode of Steven Universe was so boring. And if I think about every single finale to every season, like, you know, say what you want about every single one of them. I don't have the best things to say about the finales to season 4 or to Change Your Mind. I don't really love those. But you know what they did have? They had impact. They had stakes. You know, there was so much to it. And, you know, technically season 2, the finale for season 2, was very down to earth, but it was also right after this big impact. And I'm guessing it was trying to be like season 2, where the final episode is much calmer. But I think the difference is that with season 2, the final episode was a bit of comedy, and it also has a lot to do with the fact that the impact that, the penultimate episode, I'm trying to look for it, scroll up on the Wikipedia page, the penultimate episode of season 2, it was a build-up to something good, and it didn't insult people with mental illnesses, maybe that's why I find season 2's finale much better than the series finale. But like, Change Your Mind, that felt like a true finale, even though a lot of it I found was really bad and kind of fan servicey and just overall like sloppy. Despite all of that, I think Change Your Mind had high stakes and it had impact. And the final episode of Steven Universe Future was just boring. I just found it so boring. Like, it felt like a very classic, it felt like season 1. And maybe that was the point, because it did make a callback to the very first episode. But it felt like season 1 in the aspect that the plot was simple. It was incredibly simple, to the point of it just being annoying. It's like, oh, like the Gems thought that this would make Steven feel better, but it turns out it didn't, and they should have just been themselves the whole time. Ha ha ha. What a quirky ending to this series about space aliens and trauma. It just felt weird. It felt weird and out of place, and it felt like it felt like it belonged in season 1. And I could definitely see what they were going for, but it didn't work for me. And the weirdest thing that I noticed, like, after rewatching them is that there was no finale song. I mean, unless you count the song in the credits, but, like, there wasn't really, like, a big finale. Like, the final song of the entire series was that song that Blue Diamond had. It's just strange to me. I don't know. It felt like they were given an extreme time limit on what to think of, and they couldn't think of anything big or important besides, oh, Steven leaves home. Okay, let's just write that. It was definitely closure, but it also kind of felt like it ended so abruptly. And I think that's what left me feeling so kind of numb, like after I was done with the whole series that night, the night that it aired, and I was just like left thinking, it's over. Huh, that's weird. It just felt like a very abrupt ending, and I don't understand why we had to have that time skip from I Am My Monster. Why is I Am My Monster cut so early? Why don't we see the aftermath? It felt like there could have been a few more episodes in between I Am My Monster and the future, where, you know, we could watch the aftermath. We could see Steven coming to terms with all of this. We could see him going to therapy. But instead, it's just a time skip. A few months later, and, you know, now Steven's going away from home, even though he's 16 or 17 still. I don't know why they don't wait until he's 18. You know, he's still really young. I don't get that. But, you know, he's leaving home, and that's it. Bye. Although we did have to have one last scene where everybody's crying, and I get that it's, you know, it's a big old joke that, oh, everybody in Steven Universe is constantly crying, but that just felt like parody at that point. Where it's just like, suddenly everybody's sobbing, you know, tears are exploding from people's faces and all that, but, you know, it's over. It ended, I guess. Is that how you wanted me to feel, Rebecca Sugar? You just wanted me to feel like, oh, it's over. It happened. It sure did happen. A lot of things happened, and they just kept happening, and now it's over. So, yeah, it feels so weird how it ended with no fanfare at all. You know, I think season 2's ending makes a lot more sense because there's more things to do. There's a continuation, and we do get to see the aftermath in that episode. You know, Peridot is freaking out over what she said to Yellow Diamond. She's still coming to terms with what she did, and she has regrets, and then she doesn't, and then she doesn't. It's these weird, confusing feelings, and they're explored at least a little bit, and I think that's what makes the finale to Steven Universe as a whole so weirdly separated from everything else. But that's all. Those are my thoughts on Steven Universe. It's over. That's cool. Let me know if you liked this video. I don't know. Have fun with your lives in quarantine. Bye.